The capital smelled like rain on hot stone when Nova climbed down from the embassy carriage on the morning year 2 began, and the smell was wrong and the way home was wrong when you had spent the summer learning things your home was built to hide. She had 3 bags. One held clothes and the approved texts the academy required for second-year placement. One held Theo's summer packet, 14 pages of documented emergent inscriptions, humidity logs, directional heat vectors, the furious precision of a 14-year-old who had decided that love was a logging template and anger was a footnote. The third held her private work, 2 notebooks in Cipher shorthand, a folded map of the Vane Embassy's middle ring building drawn in coordinates rather than names, and 12 red marks she had not explained to anyone because explanation required vocabulary she had not earned. 12 anchor node locations. She did not call them that in the notebook. She called them connected points, foundation panels, ornamental friezes, the seam where heritage notation met load-bearing stone, the same authentication grammar subset she had logged in the academy practice hall before summer break. The embassy had them in the East Wing corridor, the main reception hall's ceiling border, the archive room's false bottom support, the courier stair landing, the kitchen's cold storage wall where no kitchen should need inscription work, the guest wing's second-floor junction, the attaché office threshold, the courtyard gate's interface, the stable block's water pump housing, the west salon's mirror frame backing, the roof access hatch surround, and the basement conduit junction where the building's mana routing converged like cables in a server room she was not supposed to know how to read. She had spent 8 weeks mapping them because the manor was east and the academy was here and the embassy was the Vane family's capital face, and capital faces were where institutions put infrastructure when they assumed heirs would not look past banners. She looked. Every point carried the same foundational notation, not decorative, not instructional, not the approved 7-operation grammar the OpenStax taught. Authentication markers in ornamental loops. Conditional branches disguised as floral patterns. Exception gaps too regular to be damage. The hum in her teeth at each location matched the practice hall panel's profile within tolerance bands she had measured 3 times because measurement was how you turned suspicion into data and data was how you survived when naming things too early got people killed. She did not know what they were, but she knew they were connected. And she knew the connection was not coincidence because coincidence did not repeat across 12 surfaces in a building her family had maintained for generations without asking why the kitchen needed cipher-grade foundation work. She had a hypothesis she was not ready to name. It lived in the part of her mind that filed things as investigate before weaponize. The same part that had held rank 4 private through Summer and Theo's emergent heat through 3 rounds of documented replication and Rian's one-line letters that said document everything and meant do not let them see you seeing. The attaché met her at the embassy door with the careful neutrality of a man who reported to Duke Rian and had spent 2 months watching a young lady measure walls with a student's folio and pretend she was reviewing architectural heritage. He said, "Lady Vane, your carriage to the academy is ready." She said, "Thank you." He said, "Your brother's latest packet arrived yesterday. I placed it with your bags." She said, "I have it." He did not ask about the notebooks. She did not offer. The summer's work traveled in the private bag with her hand on the strap from embassy door to carriage to academy gate, and nowhere in that transit did she open the map where attaché eyes could parse coordinates. The night tower received her on the first day of year 2 the way it had received her on the first day of year 1, with a schedule, a room assignment unchanged on the 7th floor, and the social temperature of a scholarship-adjacent noble who had placed second on the formal board and first in no public document. Sarah was already in the room when she arrived, unpacking with the economical movements of someone who had learned that space was politics and politics required knowing where everything went before anyone else decided for you. Mara looked up from the bed by the window and said, "You're back." Celine said, "Did you have a good summer?" Nova said, "Productive." Mara said, "That sounds like you." Celine said, "That also sounds like you." Sarah said nothing, which was Sarah's version of welcome. Acknowledgement without performance, the heroine revision still in progress, the script she had been handed still in her bag, but no longer mandatory reading. Nova unpacked the clothes bag. She shelved the approved texts. She placed Theo's packet in the inner drawer with the lock she had installed in week 3 of year 1, a simple physical rejection inscription on the latch, rank 3 public work. Sufficient to keep curious roommates out and insufficient to stop anyone with rank and institutional backing. She placed the private notebooks under the mattress edge where they had lived all year. She did not unpack the map in the room. She went to the bathroom on the 7th floor at second hour when the corridor was thin, locked the stall, and spread the embassy coordinates beside the practice hall entry she had logged in spring. She cross-referenced notation clusters without naming them aloud, without writing the name she was withholding, without letting the hypothesis become a word that could be seized from paper. 13 points in total, 12 in the embassy, 1 in the academy, speaking the same dialect across 2 buildings and 1 family name. She wrote in the notebook, Embassy Summer Map Complete. 12 connected foundation points. Same authentication subset as Practice Hall panel. Not decorative. Not standard. Hypothesis withheld. She closed the book. In the common room that evening, Mara asked about the manor. Celine asked about the capital's summer markets. Syrah asked, quietly, whether Theo was well. Nova said, he documents. Syrah said, that's not an answer. Nova said, it's the true one. She opened Theo's packet at her desk after lights out protocol began and the room had settled into the particular quiet of 4 girls who shared space and did not share everything. The emergent heat notation had matured, 3 complete runs, variance narrowing, a 4th experiment on light plus directional coupling that showed deliberate replication rather than accident. He had written in the margin, 4th run matched 2nd. Heat vector stable. Did you know it would stabilize? She did not write back tonight. She filed the page in the fault database's emergent case study section and added a line she would not say aloud. Theo was getting faster than the threat model allowed. Year 2 began with breakfast in the ground floor hall where second-year students occupied marginally better tables than first years, and the board from spring still held Pren Kale's name above hers on the garden wall, faded but legible. The merit story the patrons had wanted now weathered into assumption. Edwick sat with his cohort near the herb beds and did not approach. Diminished, not gone, never gone with nobles who filed complaints and received dismissals and interpreted dismissal as temporary setback rather than verdict. He watched her once across the courtyard and looked away first. She filed that, hostility reduced, narrative bruised, monitor anyway. Advanced theory track placement arrived on her schedule before lunch, a line item she had expected and still felt in her chest like a door opening onto a room with more windows and fewer curtains. Second-year advanced theory met in the East Wing's smaller halls, fewer students, more proctor attention, the academy's machinery for separating students who memorized effects from students who understood conditionals. Pren Kale's name was on the same list. He found her at the schedule board and said, "We survived year 1. She said, "You placed first." He said, "You let me." She said, "Take it." He looked at her with the same scholarship instinct warring with evidence he had carried since formal assessment, calibration suspected, merit desired, trust provisional. He said, "Advanced theory. Toryn's tier." She said, "Yes." He said, "Good." The word was simple. The word was also alliance. Not declared, not sealed, the commoner scholarship student and the noble second place sharing a track that would put them in the same rooms as people who reported upward. She walked to the East Wing for the year 2 opening session and felt the academy's bones differently than she had in year 1. Year 1 had been orientation, learn the cage's visible bars, map the doors, identify which guards pretended not to see you. Year 2 was depth, the same buildings with more permission to read them, the same hum in her teeth with more vocabulary to describe it, the embassy's 12 points echoing in every foundation frieze she passed. The practice hall was closed for maintenance until 3rd day. She was not sorry. She had the panel memorized. She had Summer's map to integrate. She had Theo's heat in the drawer and rank 4 in her fingers and 2nd on the wall and 1st in the places that mattered. At the embassy, she had measured a basement conduit junction until her hand cramped. At the manor, Theo had sent packets every 10 days. At the academy, the work continued. She sat in the night tower that night with Syrah, reading across the room, and Mara humming something off-key, and Celine mending a cuff. And she copied one embassy notation cluster into Cipher shorthand from memory, authentication loop, conditional branch, exception gap, the same 3 strokes she had logged in the practice hall corner before summer. The points were connected. She had not named them yet. She slept 4 hours and woke to the capital's rain and the hum that was becoming a second sense. She ate breakfast and did not perform first place and did not perform innocence, only exactly enough diligence to keep the advanced track open while the real work stayed in the bag, Theo's emergent heat in the drawer, and the hypothesis unnamed in her chest. That was the trade. She had learned it in another life. She was still learning what it cost in this one. Year 2 classes resumed on the 3rd day with the particular efficiency of an institution that treated summer break as a pause button rather than a reset. And Nova integrated the embassy summer map with Academy anchor research the way she had once integrated client infrastructure scans with vendor patch databases, slowly, cross-referenced, unwilling to commit to a label until the pattern held under stress. The practice hall reopened at 2nd hour. She did not go immediately. Immediate was appetite. Appetite was visibility. She went at 4th hour when paired revision filled the hall with murmured notation and the foundation corner could be passed at natural pace, without the performance of a girl who had waited all summer to stare at a wall. The panels still hummed. Authentication subset unchanged. Resonance profile consistent with her spring log within the variance band humidity introduced. She drank from the east fountain, memorized nothing new from the frieze itself. She had already taken what the frieze would give, and instead opened her folio to a blank page where embassy coordinates sat in Cipher beside Academy coordinates. Connected by lines she drew with a ruler borrowed from Celine's sewing kit, because precision mattered and freehand lines lied. 12 embassy points, 1 Academy point, 13 total. The notation clusters overlapped at 91% when she ran the comparison the way she ran fault database merges, stroke by stroke, conditional branch by conditional branch. The same missing exception handler wearing stone in the capital and stone in the academy, as if one hand had templated both. Intentionality's shape sharpened, though it was not proof yet. She filed the integration in the notebook. Embassy 12 cross-ref practice hall 1 foundational notation match 91. Same authentication grammar. Same exception gap pattern. Infrastructure hypothesis strengthening. Name withheld. Advanced theory track met in a hall with fewer seats and more windows, which meant more light on her hands and more reason to perform approved notation with Cipher hidden at the edges Toryn had taught her to bury in plain sight. Pren sat 2 rows forward and left, the scholarship student's chosen position, visible enough for merit narrative, not so visible that noble adjacency looked like patronage. She sat where the proctor's sightline required clean work and her peripheral vision could read the east wall's foundation frieze that nobody else in the room seemed to hear humming. Toryn lectured on emergent branch control at Year 2 depth, not the threshold concept from Rank 2's introductory week, but the operational grammar of coupling, waste energy routing. The difference between planned output and emergent output when complete notation interacted with environment variables the approved curriculum preferred to call accidents. Nova listened with her public face and her private attention split. The lecture's approved skeleton on the tablet, the embassy basement conduit junction in memory, Theo's 4th run stabilization in the drawer, the practice hall panel's authentication loop in her teeth. Pren took notes in the margin style Nova recognized from Year 1 fault tags, conductivity corrections, the obsessive organization of someone who had learned that chaos in notation became chaos in outcomes. After lecture he said, "The coupling example, that's what your brother's heat work is doing, isn't it?" She said, "You read my mail." He said, "I read the theory. I inferred the application." She said nothing for a beat. Inference was not breach. Inference was what advanced students did when they were brilliant and honest and dangerous in the way allies were dangerous. They saw patterns you had not offered. She said, "Don't say that in a hallway." He said, "I won't." The exchange was 3 sentences and a boundary. She filed it. Pren inference upgraded. Compartmentalized Theo. Trust operational, not total. Roommate dynamics resumed their Year 1 shape with Year 2 weight. Sierra occupied the room's political center without trying the loon name. The heroine revision. The letter to her father, still unmailed according to the drawer Nova had not searched, but had noticed stayed thick. Mara occupied the emotional center, warmth without calculation, applause for everyone's small victories, the scholarship table's reminder that not everything was a file. Seelan occupied the practical center, mended cuffs, borrowed rulers, the dry observation that smart families documented and other families performed. Nova occupied the edge. She taught Mara conductivity at the scholarship table on Tuesday evening because teaching was cover and cover was kindness, and kindness at this table was sometimes the same operation. She helped Seelan with conditional phrasing because helping was normal and normal was camouflage. She answered Sierra's questions about Theo with he documents, and Sierra's questions about the advanced track with Torryn's tier, and Sierra's questions about whether she was all right with fine, which was true in the operational sense and incomplete in every other sense. Caden's proximity pattern continued without announcement. He sat one corral over in the open stacks on Wednesday. He took the practice hall path on Thursday at the hour she had returned to after testing his flexibility in spring. He did not speak. He did not soften. His boots on stone were forge-trained and distinctive and present the way a camera was present when you could not see the lens but knew the angle. She altered route once, garden wall, east stair, and returned to the practice hall path the following day. His boots were on stone. The non-interaction was data. The data was getting thicker. Sierra said, "He's still reading you." Nova said, "Then he should take notes." Sierra said, "That's not funny." Nova said, "It wasn't a joke." Edwig's hostility had diminished into weather, the lordling who had filed a complaint and received dismissal now occupying a social position where approaching Nova cost more than it gained. He whispered with his cohort near the herb beds. He did not file again. He watched from the margin the way nobles watched when they were waiting for a mistake rather than manufacturing one. Diminished, not gone. She monitored anyway. In the library on Friday, she spread the embassy map beside the practice hall coordinates and added a second academy point she had been circling since enrollment week, the Grand Hall's orientation ceiling tell. The amplification array's northeast bias during demonstration tours, authentication grammar in the ornamental border that students called tradition, and she called clustery's cousin. 14 points now if she counted ceiling and panels separately in the same building, 12 embassy, 2 academy in 1 hall. She drew the lines. The foundational notation matched. She still did not name it. Naming was a privilege rank and evidence had not yet purchased. At dinner, Mara asked whether Summer had been lonely at the embassy. Nova said, quiet. Seelan said, same thing sometimes. Nova almost smiled. Almost. She wrote a letter to Theo at the embassy desk on Saturday, technical paragraphs only, questions about Run 4's humidity branch, corrections to the coupling preamble, one buried praise in a footnote about efficient dismissal timing. She did not write I'm proud. She did not write be careful. She sealed it and gave it to the runner and filed the act under protect and document, same operation, different grammar. Advanced Theory's second week brought paired exercises with Pren on conditional bridges, the work that separated students who could execute from students who could diagnose. He found a fault in her approved notation that was not a fault, a deliberate cipher compression she had hidden too well. And she corrected it to approved skeleton before the proctor passed, and he said nothing, and she said nothing, and the nothing was trust's currency spent carefully. Caden sat one corral over that afternoon. She felt his attention on her hands the way she felt the foundation hum, constant, peripheral, not addressable without seen. She did not address it. Year 2's second week closed with the integration map in her notebook, Embassy 12, Academy 2, notation match above 90%, hypothesis unnamed, and the scholarship table's warmth around her like a room with the windows open. And the night scholar's file one line thicker in a log she could not read but could infer from boots on stone. Classes had resumed. Maps had merged. Edwick remained in the margin. Proximity continued. The work continued. She went to bed with the hum in her teeth and the unnamed hypothesis in her chest, and the performance of fine settled on her face like a mask she had worn so long she could not always feel where her skin ended and the mask began. She noticed that, filed it, and did not resolve it. Resolution would come later. The year had only begun. Master Scholar had attended the Year 2 opening practical session with a clipboard he had not carried in Year 1's first weeks, and Nova noticed the upgrade in attention the way she noticed proctor rotation changes, not announced, not explained. Filed as environmental shift that altered threat calculus. The practical hall smelled like stone dust and ozone from 100 dismissed inscriptions. Second-year students demonstrated emergent branch control on demonstration stones while first years watched from the gallery tier. The Academy's ritual of showing the year below what competence looked like when nobles and scholarship students shared a floor and pretended the floor was level. Nova performed rank 3. Clean. Controlled. Approved skeleton with Cipher at the edges buried in the conditional phrasing Toryn had taught her to hide in plain sight. The emergent branch held within tolerance. The proctor nodded. The gallery murmured. Head wrote something on his clipboard without looking alarmed, which was worse than alarm because alarm would have meant he had seen something he could name incorrectly. Calm meant he was cataloging. She filed it. Head attention upgraded Year 2 opening. Clipboard active. Report risk elevated. Pren demonstrated beside her on the paired rotation. Brilliant, consistent. The scholarship student's performance of merit that was not performance because he had earned every stroke. Head's eyes tracked Pren's work with professional interest and tracked Nova's work with professional interest layered with something else. The pipeline instinct Toryn had warned her about without naming Crane in a hallway where walls had ears. After demonstration Head said, Lady Vane. A moment. She stopped. He said, your emergent branch control has improved. She said, practice. He said, recognized. The word landed the same way it had in Year 1's advanced theory corridor. Not praise, cataloging. He looked at her hands. He looked at her tablet. He said, continue approved notation emphasis. She said, yes, Master Head. He walked away. She watched him go and thought about pipelines, Toryn choosing silence, Head choosing standards, Crane somewhere above both choosing what silence meant. The tension was not new. It was Year 2 weighted, more rank, more visibility, more reason for a Master Scholar who reported unusual work upward to watch a Vane who placed second deliberately and still bled Cipher at the edges when fatigue lowered her guard. Toryn lectured advanced theory that afternoon on self-referential loops at depth sufficient to make first-year OpenStack texts look like children's primers. The East Wing Hall held 32 students. Pren sat in the scholarship position. Nova sat where proctors could see her hands. Toryn did not look at her longer than he looked at anyone else, which was Thursday channel discipline extended to public hours, overlap, without display, knowledge without alliance declared in a room Head might enter. The lecture's content was approved grammar with pre-academy shadows, exception handling described as footnotes rather than operations. The 5 missing operations absent from the slides, but present in the gaps between what Toryn said and what the folio on his desk suggested he knew. Nova took notes in approved notation on the tablet and in Cipher shorthand in the margin where geometric fidgeting looked like anxiety rather than reconnaissance. After lecture Pren said, the loop tolerance example, that's the same fault family as the perimeter issue I reported. She said, you reported a perimeter issue. He said to Toryn. Last term. She said, I know. He looked at her. The look was provisional trust. He had reported through channels she had steered him toward. And he was testing whether she already knew because knowing implied network and network implied danger and danger implied he was not alone in seeing that approved grammar had holes. She said, good report. Continue through Toryn. He said, I will. 2 sentences. Boundary. Alliance maintained without declaration. Nova mapped another Academy anchor node on the day Head's clipboard appeared and Toryn's lecture ended, and the Capitol's afternoon rain made the East Wing's windows weep condensation onto the sills. Not the practice hall panel, she had that. The lecture wing's basement junction where the stairwell met the conduit channel that fed the Grand Hall's amplification array. She had passed it 14 times in year 1 without stopping because stopping was logging and logging required privacy. Year 2 gave her more permission to be in basement corridors without looking like a student who had lost her way, and more reason to look lost when she was not. The junction hummed. Low frequency. Steady amplitude. Authentication grammar in the conduit housing's ornamental plate, heritage notation, academy seal, revision date carved in the border. The same decorative label the practice hall panel wore, and the embassy kitchen's cold storage wall wore, and every connected point she had mapped wore like a uniform no one was supposed to recognize as uniform. She memorized 3-stroke clusters. She counted her steps to the stairwell exit at natural pace. She did not stop. In the bathroom on the ground floor at 5th hour, she copied the notation structure in Cipher and added coordinates relative to the practice hall panel and the grand hall ceiling tell. She wrote in the notebook, Lecture Wing Basement Junction, Connected Point 14. Same foundational notation. Authentication subset. Resonance profile matches embassy summer map within tolerance. Academy total, 3 confirmed. Embassy total, 12. Crossref complete for summer integration. 15 points if she counted without merging building duplicates, 12 embassy, 3 academy. She drew the lines in the private map and felt the hypothesis press against the inside of her ribs without becoming a word. Head's pipeline to Crane was tension she could not see directly but could infer from architecture, conservative master scholar, reliable reports, unusual work flagged upward. The Grand Archivist's godfather interest a warmth in restricted checkout logs and a name in the pre-archive record Toryn had shown her without showing her. The removed line about Kira Vane that confirmed removal was policy, not accident. If Head watched, Crane listened. If Crane listened, the embassy's 12 points and the academy's 3 points were not merely academic curiosity. They were threat surface. She filed the tension without resolving it. Resolution required rank she did not have publicly and evidence she could not yet present without revealing how she had learned to read authentication grammar in stone at rank 3 posted. Torryn's Thursday office hour arrived without a note this week. The channel was established now, appointment implied by schedule rather than paper tucked under ink trays. She went at 7th hour. He closed the door. Privacy, not threat. He said, Year 2 opening. Head's attention. She said, clipboard. He said, yes. She said, I performed clean. He said, I know. He did not ask about the basement junction. He did not ask about the embassy summer map. Thursday channel had limits, and she had not yet brought infrastructure maps to Thursday folio hunger, controlled grammar expansion, perimeter fault patches, not I mapped 12 connected points in your family's embassy and 3 in your employer's academy. He said, advanced theory paired work with Kale continues. He reports well. She said, he earned the track. Toryn nodded once. Approval or acknowledgement. Both possible from Toryn. She left with the folio's shadow in her memory and Head's clipboard in her file and the basement junction's hum in her teeth. Caden was in the library when she returned, 1 Corel over, forged theory text unopened, attention on her profile. She did not look up. She spread approved text for cover and updated the private map beneath the cover's edge where the Corel wall hid Cipher shorthand from the sight line he had chosen. Proximity continued. Head watched. Toryn lectured. Pren reported through channels. The hypothesis remained unnamed. At dinner Sierra said Head had asked about Nova's summer work in the advanced theory corridor, casual question, professional tone, the kind of inquiry that looked like mentorship and functioned like intake. Nova said, I reviewed architectural heritage at the embassy. True enough. Incomplete enough. Sierra said, he wrote something down. Nova said, he writes things down. Mara said, is that bad? Nova said, it's data. Seelan said, you say that about everything. Nova said, because it's usually true. She ate and taught Mara conductivity and did not perform alarm and did not perform innocence and performed diligence exactly sufficient to keep Heads cataloging from finding a category error she could not afford to feed upward. The pipeline to Crane was tension without shape, inference, architecture, the vaulted circles still without a name in her notebook, but with a fingerprint that strengthened every time she mapped another connected point and every time Head's clipboard moved. Head was watching. Toryn was teaching. Pren was adjacent. Caden sat one Corel over. 3 academy points, 12 embassy points, and the hypothesis pressed against her ribs without a name. She went to bed without naming it. Naming would come when evidence purchased the vocabulary or when vocabulary became cheaper than silence, and neither had happened yet. She slept 4 hours, the hum continuing, the work continuing. She would map the next point when the corridor was right and the hour was thin, and the performance of a diligent second-year advanced theory student could pass a basement junction without Head's clipboard finding a reason to write her name twice. Toryn's note arrived on a Tuesday without seal or flourish, the handwriting spare as always, my office. 7th hour. Thursday. Private consultation. Nova went. She had learned to read Toryn's appointments by what they omitted. No question mark meant refusal carried cost. Private consultation meant the door would close and what happened inside would not appear on Head's clipboard unless she performed badly enough to make it unavoidable. His office smelled like old paper and the courtyard rain the window admitted. Shelves crowded with texts the open collection did not carry. The folio behind his desk sat closed, its presence a reminder that Thursday Channel existed because he chose to open it, not because the academy required him to. He closed the door. He said, "Sit." She sat. He did not open the folio immediately. He looked at her the way he looked at notation that had stopped pretending to be something else, assessment without warmth, assessment without cruelty. The particular attention of a scholar who had spent 4 years collecting evidence before acting and had finally reached the threshold where action cost less than silence. He said, "I am going to name something you have hidden." She did not flinch. Flinching was seen. Seen was data for people who watched. She said, "All right." He said, "Cipher affinity." The words sat in the air between them without decoration. Not question. Not accusation. Classification offered to see whether she would deny it or perform ignorance or meet him with the honesty Thursday Channel had been building toward since the pre-academy folio's 12 operations appeared on his desk and her mother's name appeared in the removed archive note. She said yes. One word. No performance. No hedging. Toryn nodded as if she had confirmed a mathematical proof he had already checked twice. He said, "Do you know what cipher inscription means historically?" She said, "Classified archaic." The phrase was approved curriculum's polite burial, the way OpenStax described what they would not teach, the way institutions turned suppression into taxonomy. Toryn said, it was classified as archaic after the Sever school's suppression. It was classified as dangerous to the approved framework because cipher mages tend to find the assumptions in standard inscriptions. He did not raise his voice. He did not lean forward for emphasis. The danger in the sentence was structural, not theatrical. The same danger Nova had been mapping in fault databases since Cluster C. The same danger her mother had hunted in gaps. The same danger that made rank 4 private work possible at rank 3 posted ceiling, because the ceiling was not sky, it was lid, and Cipher lived at the edges. She said nothing. He watched her silence and accepted it as answer sufficient. He pulled a document from the drawer, not the folio, not restricted section red stamp, a copy layer thin enough to fold and old enough that the ink had faded at the margins. Pre-archive record. The kind of paper institutions kept when they wanted memory without publication. He slid it across the desk. Lady Kira Vane's name. Clear. Unmistakable. The handwriting of a registry clerk who had not known the name would outlive the policy that tried to bury it. Beside the name, Cipher Affinity rank 6, research flagged. Nova read it once. She read it twice. The second reading was not disbelief. Disbelief was luxury. The second reading was verification, the way she verified fault logs before exploitation, the way she verified Theo's emergent runs before praise buried in footnotes. Rank 6. Research flagged. Her mother's name in a record that was supposed to not exist in any channel Nova could access without breaching systems she had not yet breached. Flagged meant watched. Flagged meant pipeline. Flagged meant Crane's Godfather warmth and Head's clipboard, and the embassy's 12 connected points, and the academy's 3, and every hum in her teeth since the practice hall panel first spoke a dialect she had not been taught in approved texts. She folded the document carefully. Fold lines precise. No crease through the name. Paper was artifact. Artifacts could be seized. Folding was custody. She put it in her bag. Toryn said, I have not told anyone. She said, how long have you known? He said, since midterm. Possibly before. I waited because naming early without protection is how flagged records become active enforcement. She said, and now? He said, now you are year 2 advanced theory with head watching and Ashvale proximity and a second place board position that is obviously calibrated. Now you need to know what you are in the institution's taxonomy. She said, Cipher affinity. Rank 6 in my mother's record. Research flagged. He said, yes. She said, the folio you showed me, the 12 operations, that's Cipher. He said, that's a complete Cipher grammar from before the amputation. Your mother did not invent it. She extended it. She said, and the Sever school. He said, related tradition. Suppressed earlier. Cipher survived in fragments because fragments are harder to burn than people. The sentence was blunt. Toryn did not soften it. She respected that. She said, why give me the record now? He said, because you are mapping something in this building. I don't ask what. I know the mapping posture when I see it. Cipher mages map assumptions. Institutions map Cipher mages. You need to know which map you're on. She looked at the bag where the folded document rested against Theo's summer packet and her Cipher notebooks and the private map with 12 embassy points and 3 academy points and the hypothesis still unnamed in her chest. She said, thank you. The words were spare. Warmth in action, not speech. She would protect the channel, protect Pren's reports, protect the folio's existence, protect the record's custody the way she protected Theo's emergent heat with documentation requests instead of sentiment. Toryn said, do not thank me in hallways. Do not bring Edwick. Do not bring the crown. Do not bring Masterhead. She said, I know the rules. He said, good. He opened the folio then, not the record again, the grammar, and they spent the remaining hour on conditional branches at depth that approved curriculum would call excessive and Cipher tradition called baseline. She did not touch the ink. She read. She traced logic and air above the page. She felt the click of complete language settling in her chest like a lock finding its key. The same click as the Manor's bottom shelf text and the embassy basement junction and the practice hall panel and her mother's proof she had not yet found but knew existed in a desk somewhere east. When 7th hour ended, she left through the faculty corridor's quiet wing with the document in her bag and Cipher affinity named in private and nothing changed in public. Still rank 3 posted. Still second on the board. Still advanced theory student performing approved notation with edges hidden. Caden was not in the library that afternoon. She noticed his absence the way she noticed route changes filed, not interpreted. Absence was not softness. Absence was schedule variance. She went to the night tower and locked the drawer and unfolded the record once more in the stall on the 7th floor when the corridor was thin. Lady Kira Vane. Cipher affinity rank 6, research flagged. She read it twice again. She folded it carefully again. She put it in the inner pocket of her coat, not the drawer, the coat she wore when she walked routes that might be searched, the coat whose inner pocket had held notebooks since week 3 of year 1. She wrote in the notebook, Toryn Cipher affinity named private. Mother pre-archive record confirmed. Rank 6 flagged. Custody on person. Head excluded. Crane unnamed but implied. She closed the book. The hypothesis pressed against her ribs with new vocabulary attached, not named silence, not named protocol, not named vaulted circle, but named cipher, named flagged. Named the tradition that found assumptions in standard inscriptions and therefore found the assumptions embedded in stone at the embassy and the academy and the practice hall and the basement junction, and every connected point she had mapped since spring. She ate dinner at the scholarship table. Mara asked about advanced theory. Celine asked about the rain. Sarah asked nothing about Toryn, which meant Sarah had learned to read what not to ask. Nova said fine when Mara asked if she was all right. Fine was operational. Fine was incomplete. Fine was performance she could not drop at the table without explaining why a second-year advanced theory student with a Vane name and a flagged mother and a Cipher affinity named in private could not afford to be anything other than fine in a common room where walls had ears and heads pipeline had reach. She taught Mara conductivity after dinner because teaching was cover and cover was kindness. She did not tell Mara about the record. She did not tell Sierra. She did not tell Pren. Compartmentalization or leak. The document rested against her ribs through evening study and lights out protocol and the particular quiet of 4 girls who shared space and did not share everything. The document rested against her ribs through evening study and lights out protocol and the particular quiet of 4 girls who shared space and did not share everything. Cipher was named in private now. Her mother was flagged. The record was in the code. The hypothesis was strengthening. She slept with her hand on the inner pocket once, briefly, the way you touched a key you could not afford to lose, then removed her hand because performance required stillness. Stillness was also hers, though she was not sure where the boundary lived anymore. She filed that uncertainty without resolving it. Tonight's work was custody, and she had custody, and she would keep it. Nova mapped the night tower's ground floor foundation played on a morning when first-year orientation flooded the courtyard and proctors were too occupied with new arrivals to watch second-year students who looked like they belonged in basement corridors and basement. Corridors were where buildings kept their honest grammar. The plate sat beneath the entry arch's decorative seal, heritage notation, revision date, ornamental vines. The uniform disguise she had learned to read across 12 embassy points and 3 academy points, and now a 4th within the dormitory wing she slept in. It hummed. Low frequency. Steady amplitude. Authentication subset in the northwest loop. Conditional branch in the vine pattern east of the seal. Exception gap too regular to be damage. She passed at natural pace. She memorized. She drank from the courtyard fountain she did not need because drinking was cover. She returned to the night tower common room and waited until Mara left for lecture and Celine left for mending club and Sierra left for the library before she copied coordinates in Cipher on the mattress edge notebook. Academy total, 4. Embassy total, 12. 16 points. She cross-referenced the night tower plate against the embassy's summer map and the practice hall panel and the lecture wing basement junction and the grand hall ceiling tell. Notation match held at 90% or above on every comparison. The foundational grammar did not vary by building function, dormitory, instructional hall, reception, kitchen cold storage, courier stair, archive false bottom, stable pump housing, mirror frame backing, roof hatch surround, basement conduit, practice hall corner, orientation ceiling. Connected. The cross-reference table in her notebook grew a second page. Embassy column. Academy column. Notation cluster IDs. Resonance profiles. Relative coordinates translated into a single map whose center she had not chosen yet, because choosing a center implied theory and theory was approaching the threshold where withholding a name cost more than naming cost risk. She still did not name it. She wrote, 16 points. 12 Embassy Summer. For Academy Year 2. Foundational notation consistent. Building toward full Academy map. Do not estimate total in notebook. 19 was a number she had not written. 19 was a number she held in a mental file without putting the total anywhere the notebook could be seized. A letter arrived from Theo on Thursday, routed through the embassy drop, collected at the Academy's correspondence desk where attaches pretended not to parse content and proctors pretended correspondence was not surveillance surface. Theo's handwriting had grown steadier. The sentences had not grown longer. He wrote, 5th run. Heat stable. 6th run. Added directional constraint from your footnote. Worked first attempt. Attached. Do you want 7th to test failure modes or replication? Attached. 2 diagrams, cipher strokes, emergent branch circled in pencil that was no longer angry, precision replacing fury the way practice replaced panic when talented children learned that documentation was how you survived. Nova read it at her corral with Caden 1 row over and the forge theory text unopened and the proximity pattern continuing its ugly functional silence. She did not smile at the letter. Warmth in action, not speech, she would answer with technical paragraphs, failure mode template, replication protocol, the grammar of care that could not be quoted by the wrong person in a hallway where heads pipeline listened. She wrote back at the embassy desk before curfew, 7th failure modes. Deliberate humidity drop below run 5 conditions. Document variance. Do not demonstrate to schoolroom audience. Send all runs. She did not write I'm proud. She did not write be careful. She sealed it. The attaché took it without comment. Rian's reply came 2 days later, one line as always, routed through the same channel. He is faster than we planned. Slow him without crushing him. You know how. Father and daughter communicating in constraints. Nova read it twice. She burned the copy after memorizing. Paper was artifact. Memory was not. She sat in the night tower that evening with Theo's 5th and 6th runs spread on the desk and Rian's sentence in her head, and the cross-reference map in the notebook, and the Toryn record in the coat's inner pocket, and the performance of fine settled on her face. Syrah said, you look tired. Nova said, advanced theory. Mara said, ugly freeze again. Nova said, ugly freeze. Seelan said, you always say that about architecture. Nova said, architecture deserves it. Mara laughed. The laugh was real. The laugh was warm. Nova let it land on her without performing response and felt something loosen in her chest that was not resolution and not safety, something adjacent to belonging she did not trust enough to name. She had been performing good behavior since waking in vain manner, pleasant neutral face, compliant air, diligent student, 2nd place on the board, scholarship table kindness, conductivity lessons for Mara, technical letters for Theo, constraints for Rian, Thursday channel discipline for Toryn, approved notation for Head, route discipline for Caden, silence for Edwick. The performance was strategic. The performance was also, some evenings, the only grammar she had fluent enough to speak without calculating audience. She taught Mara conductivity because teaching was cover and cover was kindness. Was the kindness performance? Was the teaching real? She corrected Theo's coupling preamble because correction was protection. Was the protection love? Was love performance if it never said the word? She held 2nd place because strategy required visibility managed. Was strategy the only reason she had not taken 1st? She had let Pren place 1st because he earned it and because merit narrative served him and because she needed the board to show calibration rather than dominance. That was true. It was also true that she had wanted him to have it. She filed both truths without merging them. Merging was emotional work she was inside now, not at its resolution. At the scholarship table she applauded when Seelan passed a threshold exercise Mara had been struggling with for a week. The applause was automatic. The automatic quality frightened her more than calculation did calculation she understood from another life. Automatic warmth she did not always know how to source. She looked at her hands on the table, hands that wrote rank 4 in private, that taught conductivity in public, that folded Kira Vane's flagged record and put it in a coat, that answered Theo with failure mode templates. Where did performance end and where did she begin? The question was not new. It had been waiting since the Manor Garden, since the first pleasant neutral face in the mirror, since the first choice to document instead of exploit, since the first night she built a fault database for orientation instead of sale. It intensified in year 2 because year 2 had more permission to be competent and more reason to hide competence and more people. Mara, Syrah, Pren, Toryn, even Syrah's unsent letter energy, who responded to behaviors she could not entirely partition into strategic and genuine. Caden's proximity was not warmth. Toryn's record was not warmth. Theo's letters were warmth she trusted because instructions were harder to perform than sentiment and Theo heard care in instructions or he did not. Mara's hug when Seelan passed the exercise was warmth Nova did not initiate and did not reject. She accepted the hug with the stiff economy of a person who had not learned early that acceptance could be uncalculated. Mara did not comment on the stiffness. Mara was like that. Nova went to bed with 4 academy points mapped and 12 embassy points cross-referenced and 16 total on the private table and Theo's 6th run in the drawer and Rian's sentence in memory and the Toryn record against her ribs and the question about performance open in the file she did not write in the notebook because some files were too personal to survive seizure. She slept 4 hours. She woke to rain. She ate breakfast. She performed fine. She performed diligence. She walked the practice hall path at the hour Caden's boots were on stone. She did not look up. He did not look down. The non-interaction was data. The data was not the emotional core. The emotional core was the hug she had accepted without calculating cost, and the letter she had answered without praise, and the conductivity lesson she had taught because Mara needed it, and the needing was real even if the teaching was also cover. She could not separate the layers cleanly anymore. She was not sure she wanted to. Wanting was dangerous. Dangerous was not the same as false. Dangerous was not the same as false. 16 points were mapped. Theo was accelerating. Rian's constraint was remembered. Her mother's flagged record rested in the coat. Performance and person were intertwined, and she filed the intertwining as emotional state, active, unresolved, operational. She went to advanced theory. Pren nodded once across the hall. Toryn lectured on exception handling without naming the 5 missing operations. Head's clipboard appeared in the gallery doorway and disappeared again. Edwick watched from the herb beds. Caden sat one corral over in the afternoon. The work continued. She had performed good behavior long enough that the performance had become muscle memory, and the muscle memory had begun to feel like a self she could not fully audit. She would audit it later, when evidence-purchased vocabulary or vocabulary became cheaper than silence. For now she mapped the next corridor, answered Theo with failure modes, held the record against her ribs and the hug stiffness in her memory, and the fine on her face, and the hum in her teeth, and the unnamed hypothesis pressing against bone. Not comfort. Enough. Sarah Loon had thought year 2 would clarify things. Instead it clarified how little she had understood year 1. The academy opened its autumn term with the same stone and the same schedules and the same polite fiction that rankings on a garden wall described who students were rather than who they had chosen to be seen as. Second-year placements had shifted cohorts, scholarship tables relocated to the Eastern Quad Annex, night scholars given Forge Wing priority hours, noble houses reasserting patron letters in reception halls that smelled of ink and ambition cooled by rain. Sarah watched from the balcony again, because the balcony had become a place where she could observe without performing observation. Below, Nova Vane sat with the scholarship annex table on a morning when the capital had not yet decided whether to be cold or merely damp. Pren Kale had his folio open to a conductivity diagram that looked like it had been argued with and lost. Mara leaned over his shoulder with the earnest proximity of someone who believed understanding was contagious. Seelan tapped his stylus against his teeth, the habit Sarah had catalogued in year 1 without learning his name until midterm forced the issue. Nova did not sit at the head of the table. She did not sit apart either. She sat where the problem was between Pren and the Eastern Province's girl whose cuffs were always ink-stained, reading notation across the grain of the page the way scholar Toryn read it in lecture when he forgot to perform neutrality. Pren said, "The simulation rejects below threshold force." Nova said, "Then stop trusting the simulation." The Eastern Province's girl, her name was Leora. Sarah had learned it in the second week of term when Leora had asked Sarah for a spare ribbon and Sarah had been surprised by the directness, said, "We don't have stones for live testing every morning." Nova said, "You have a courtyard and a proctor rotation that looks at phones when it should look at feet. Test on lunch break. Document variance. Bring Toryn the documentation, not the panic." That was not charity dressed as instruction. That was procedure offered without price. Sarah felt the familiar stone in her chest, the discomfort of misjudgment that had begun in year 1 and had not resolved over summer because summer had been letters from Aldous and silence from her father and a drawer in the night tower that still held paper she had not mailed. She had written the letter in humid weather when the drawer stuck and the capital air made ink dry slowly. "Father, things are different than I expected." She had added a second line before term began. "I am still learning what I am allowed to choose." She had not sealed it. She had not destroyed it. She had carried it back to the academy in the bottom of her trunk under winter wool she would not need for another month. And every morning she thought about mailing it, and every evening she thought about what mailing it would cost House Loon in a political season where crown proximity was currency and crown proximity was also a cage. Nova would have called that good procedure. Sarah was beginning to hate how often Nova was right about things that were not inscription. At the scholarship table, Pren found the gap Nova had pointed toward, a conditional branch that treated physical force and mana signature as equivalent inputs when the approved template only validated one. He wrote the correction with the focused silence of someone who had learned that brilliance, without documentation, was a story nobles told about commoners right before they took credit. Nova watched him write. She did not take the stylus. She did not claim the fix. When Pren looked up with the particular brightness of understanding, Nova nodded once and said, "Log the failure mode." Toryn collects failure modes. Pren said, "He knows I bring him things." Nova said, "He knows you bring him true things." That's different. Mara applauded quietly because Mara was like that. Seelan said, "Vane tutoring commoners. Edwig's going to write a complaint." Nova said, "Edwig writes complaints the way other people breathe. Don't give him audience." She stood. She gathered nothing because she had brought nothing except attention, and attention at that table was the expensive thing House Vane was not supposed to spend on scholarship students without extracting interest. She left before the gratitude could form into performance. Sarah filed it. She did not have Nova's Cipher notebook. She had memory. Memory was worse than paper because paper could be burned and memory accumulated until it forced you to change your name for yourself. The heroine script, the one Aldous had been writing with his smiles and his smaller invitations, the one court correspondence had implied when it called her the bright center of a gathering, required a villain. It required Nova Vane to be cruel and polished and taking up space that belonged to merit stories with commoner heroes. Prenkale placing first at year 1 formal assessment had been a merit story. Nova placing second had been a calibration Sarah had not fully understood until she watched Nova teach below threshold testing without once suggesting Pren owed her deference for the board's numbers. Second on the wall. First in the places that did not post. Sarah had read enough court correspondence to know what noble houses did with gaps like that. She had not expected to feel protective of the gap rather than suspicious of it. That was new. That was uncomfortable. That was the heroine script thinning at the edges the way cheap ink thinned when Rain found it. She went back to the room after morning lecture and opened the drawer. The letter lay where she had left it, folded, unsealed, honest in its brevity. She sat on the edge of her bunk and read it again. "Father, things are different than I expected. I am still learning what I am allowed to choose." She could mail it and let House Loon's Duke parse ambiguity as rebellion or wisdom depending on his mood and his patrons. She could burn it and stay inside a script that no longer fit. She could hold it the way Nova held rankings, visible number, private truth, the discipline of not explaining yourself to people who had already decided what you were. Nova's bunk was made with military precision. Her folio was locked. Her coat hung where the inner pocket would hold things Sarah was not supposed to ask about. Sarah had learned not to ask. Asking was how you became collateral in someone else's operational map. She was not sure she minded being adjacent to Nova's map anymore. That was the terrifying part. Lunch brought Aldous' runner with another card, smaller than the salon invitations of year 1, cream stock, embossed border. The Crown's polite handwriting suggesting a seated conversation after 4th hour in the West reception room where light was flattering and questions were traps dressed as interest. Sarah held the card between 2 fingers. Nova looked up from her soup. She said, "Your call." Sarah said, "I know." She did not ask Nova to decide. She did not ask Nova to rescue her from Crown proximity. That had been the old script, heroine besieged, villainous maneuvering, prince as answer. The territory she walked now had no clean labels. She wrote on the back of Aldous' card in pencil, "Test below threshold." Always. She did not know if he would understand. She suspected he would understand and dislike it. She went to the West reception room at 4th hour. Aldous was charm calibrated for an audience of one, warm, attentive, the performance of a man who listened because listening was power when the person speaking did not yet know what they were giving away. He said, "You've been quiet this term." Sarah said, "I've been studying." He said, "Scholar Toryn's cohort is fortunate." She said, "The scholarship annex is fortunate." Toryn teaches notation. Nova teaches procedure. His smile did not move. His eyes did. He said, "That's an interesting word for what Lady Vane does at common tables." Sarah said, "It's the accurate word." Silence sat between them with the weight of furniture too expensive to move without help. Aldous poured tea he did not drink. He said, "I worry you are being influenced by narratives that flatter scholarship students at the expense of the structure that keeps the academy stable." Cira said, "I worry you are being influenced by narratives that flatter crown princes at the expense of students who actually live here." The words left her mouth before she had fully approved them. They were not heroic. They were not villainous. They were true. Aldous's expression shifted, not anger, recalculation. He said, "You are sharper than I gave you credit for." Cira said, "You gave credit to a role. I'm a person." She left before he could reframe the conversation into protection. In the corridor, she breathed once, twice, the way Nova breathed before entering a room where proctors watched. She did not feel like a heroine. She felt like a girl who had fired a branch she was not sure she could aim. That evening, she added a third line to the unmailed letter. Nova Vane is not who they said she was. I do not know who she is yet. I am trying to find out without becoming someone else's proof. She stared at the ink. She folded the letter. She put it back in the drawer. Not mailed. Not destroyed. Held. Nova came in after night study block smelling like library dust and Cipher ink's faint metallic edge. She said nothing. She passed Cira the salt at dinner had been salt, brief contact, no performance. Cira said, into the dark when Celine was snoring and Mara had finally stopped shifting, "Do you ever get tired of being misread?" Nova was quiet long enough that Cira thought she might be asleep. Then Nova said, "Every day." Cira said, "Why keep going?" Nova said, "Because the misread version gets people hurt. The accurate version is work." Cira said, "That sounds lonely." Nova said, "It sounds like Tuesday." Cira laughed once, surprised out of her, small and real. Nova did not comment on the laugh. Cira preferred that. The heroine script had required applause for every honest moment. Nova's version required only that you keep going. Cira lay awake and listened to the capital wind against the glass and thought about Pren logging failure modes and Leora testing below threshold on lunch breaks and Aldous recalculating behind charm that no longer fit her cleanly. She thought about her father receiving a letter she had not sent. She thought about sending it. She did not send it yet. She would wait until she knew what she was saying and why. Nova would have called that good procedure. Cira was beginning to believe her. Morning came with autumn light that made the academy look honest and schedules that pretended honesty was the same as simplicity. From the balcony, Cira watched Nova cross the eastern quad with Pren and Mara toward Toryn's office hour, not leading, not following, present where the work was. Not house Vane as Cira had been taught. Not heroine as Aldous had scripted. A person doing the next thing. Cira carried the unmailed letter in her drawer and the thinning script in her chest, and the first uncomfortable hope she had felt since enrollment that she might eventually deserve a name that was only hers. Not rival. Not beloved. Herself. The words still felt too large for the staircase. She carried it anyway. Nova had learned to perform good behavior the way she had learned to perform rank, deliberately, with metrics and with a private ledger that did not match the public board. Year 2 made the ledger harder to maintain. Year 1 had taught her where proctors looked and which corridors Caden preferred and how Cira filed silence and how Pren translated help into documentation that could survive Toryn's office without looking like charity. Year 2 taught her that performance long enough became muscle memory, and muscle memory was dangerous because you stopped noticing where the act ended and the person began. She noticed in the scholarship annex at lunch when she corrected Leora's humidity branch without calculating whether the correction cost visibility. She noticed in the library when she shelved a theoretical text for Mara before remembering that shelving was not cover, it was simply the thing you did when someone needed a book and you were standing there. She noticed at night when she opened the fault database and wrote cluster tags in Cipher shorthand and felt no performance at all, only the cold satisfaction of a map getting truer. Good behavior had started as strategy and was becoming habit, either rehabilitation or the deepest con she had ever run on herself. She filed the question and kept working. The anchor node pattern was what kept her honest about which kind of work mattered. Summer at the Vane City Embassy had given her 12 locations, foundation panels in the receiving hall, load-bearing inscriptions in the archive annex, a decorative frieze in the guest wing that hummed when the capital's ambient mana dipped below seasonal average. She had copied notation in private Cipher, tagged each site with structural role and overlap percentage against the practice hall corner she had found in year 1, and carried the copies back to the academy in a folio that looked like dull architectural homework. The academy gave her 7 more in the first month of year 2. Practice hall corner, confirmed again, authentication grammar pretending to be heritage maintenance. East Wing Lecture Foundation, same foundational stroke sequence, different cosmetic wrapper. Night Tower Basement Junction, hum in her teeth when she passed, the secondary sense she had not named because naming made things real to other people. Library Catalog Desk Panel, subtle, almost invisible unless you knew to look for compression ratios that did not belong in catalog maintenance. Inscription Garden Retaining Wall, the semicircle bench where she had written rank 4 in darkness now sat 3 feet from a node whose notation matched the embassy receiving hall at 91%. She did not know what the nodes were, but she knew they were connected. Embassy 12 plus Academy 7 equaled 19 sites sharing foundational notation that did not appear in any approved text she had opened, that did not appear in Toryn's Thursday folio except as absences, that appeared in her mother's working margins as questions rather than answers. The hypothesis sat in her notebook without a name. She had learned not to name things early. Names made Crane's godfather warmth sharpen. Names made heads reports gain adjectives. Names made Caden's log upgrade from watching to confronting. So she wrote instead. Cluster N, anchor architecture, shared root grammar, cross-site replication, authentication substructure present at practice hall and embassy archive, decorative camouflage common, load-bearing claim probable false. She drew a line to the fault database's intentionality fingerprint. The same hand that removed exception handlers from curriculum texts had built infrastructure that pretended to be heritage. Same hand? She did not know. Pattern matching early had saved her before. She would rather false positive a conspiracy than false negative one and die. Toryn's Thursday channel held limits. She brought him failure modes Pren documented and humidity variance cases Leora tested and the occasional architectural question phrased as academic curiosity. Scholar. Why would a foundation panel carry authentication grammar if the building's security is ward-based? Toryn would look at the ceiling the way he had looked at it in year 1 lecture. He would say insufficient records, or he would say nothing and write in his notebook. He had formally identified her Cipher affinity in the 2nd week of term. Private consultation, door closed, the pre-archive record with her mother's name beside research flagged. He had said Cipher mages find assumptions. That is why the framework classified the notation archaic. Not because it failed. Because it succeeded at the wrong kind of questions. She had folded the record into her bag. She had not cried. Crying was performance unless it was private. She had said, I know what my mother was. Toryn had said, do you know what you are? She had said, working on it. He had handed her a text from his private collection, pre-formalization grammar, more complete than her derivations, less complete than her mother's box under Theo's planter. Overlap deepened. Trust deepened slower. That was correct. Pren was the trust network's proof of concept. He brought Toryn true things. He brought Nova questions he could have hidden to protect his board placement. He placed first at year 1 formal assessment because she had let him, and because he had earned it, and because merit stories needed a commoner hero the patrons could photograph without examining who had stacked the board before scholarship students arrived. She met him in the library after 4th hour with the anchor overlap tables disguised as conductivity homework. He said, these percentages aren't thermal. She said, no. He said, what are they? She looked at him, scholarship instinct, brilliance, the hunger to understand systems that had tried to exclude him by calling exclusion standards. She said, structural notation overlap across building foundations. I'm building a map. I need someone who documents without panicking. He said, you need someone who documents without telling the administration. She said, yes. He was quiet for 3 seconds. He said, Toryn. She said, Toryn gets failure modes first. This comes later. He said, later when? She said, "When I have a name I'm willing to say out loud." He nodded. The nod was acceptance or surrender or both. He said, "I'll log site IDs and overlap numbers. I won't log guesses." She said, "Good." That was Pren, operational when you gave him procedure, dangerous when you gave him performance. The database grew at night. The bathroom at second hour remained the safest perimeter monitor location. The library corral at 11th hour remained the place where Cipher shorthand looked like anxiety doodles. The fault database and the anchor map cross-referenced authentication panels in cluster 4 linked to anchor sites with authentication substructure. Missing exception handlers in cluster 3 linked to nodes whose root grammar used self-referential loops without safety preambles. Intentionality's shape sharpened. She wrote in the notebook at midnight, "If the same root grammar appears in Embassy Foundation and Academy Practice Hall, the system is not documenting heritage. The system is documenting deployment." Hypothesis unnamed. Continue accretion. She closed the book and locked it in the coat in her pocket. She walked back to the night tower through a path that avoided Proctor overlap and Caden's preferred library exit, though Caden had been taking the library exit less predictably lately, which was its own kind of data. Proximity without hostility. Observation upgraded. She filed it. In the dormitory, Sierra slept with the even restlessness of someone rewriting herself. Mara murmured in a dream about conductivity. Nova set her alarm for dawn practical and lay in the dark feeling the hum in her teeth from the basement junction 3 floors below, performance and person, map and habit. Rank 3 public on every board that mattered to patrons and rank 4 private in a garden stone dismissed and a bathroom monitor she maintained and a novel compound she had not shown Toryn yet because Thursday Channel had limits. The gap was infrastructure and the gap was also the truest thing about her. She thought about Hannah Seo, the woman who had hurt people because the money was real and the damage was optional until it wasn't. She thought about Nova Vane, the woman who taught below-threshold testing to scholarship students because optional damage was still damage and the system had been optional with people's futures for centuries. Where did one end and the other begin? Caden had asked nothing yet. Toryn had asked once, "Do you know what you are?" and she had answered, "Working on it." The answer was still true. She slept in short cycles because the work did not stop at lights out. Before dawn she dreamed in notation, root grammar repeating across stone. She had walked in 2 cities, a sentence without a verb, a hypothesis without a name. She woke with the map clearer and the name still withheld. She ate breakfast, taught Mara variance bands because teaching was cover and cover was kindness, went to class and performed rank 3. She meant it when she helped. That was the terrifying part. She meant it. Caden Ashvale had intended to study forged metal stress tables in the East Library wing on a night when rain made the windows weep and the tower of First Script pulsed low-calibration light across the Capitol like a heartbeat measured in ink. He had a Corel reserved, 3rd row, window side, the desk lamp that flickered if you did not tap the base twice before sitting. Nova Vane's Corel was adjacent. He knew because he had logged her library patterns for 6 weeks into year 2 the way he logged everything, dates, durations, texts checked out, exits taken. The particular silence she made when she was working versus the silence she made when she was performing working. He did not sit adjacent on purpose every time. He sat adjacent often enough that purpose and pattern had blurred. Tonight she was not there. Her coat was gone from the hook. Her folio lock was engaged on the shelf where she kept it when she did not carry it to the dormitory. The Corel surface was clear except for one thing she had left behind. Not a book, not a stylus, a stack of loose sheets in Cipher notation covered by a theoretical architecture text placed offset, as if someone had stood abruptly and forgotten the cover was incomplete. Caden saw the sheets because he sat down and his elbow brushed the text and the offset stack slid half an inch. He did not read other people's work. He had a log for that. He had principles for that. He also had 8 months of data saying Nova Vane's public rank did not equal her actual capability, and a midterm tablet with Cipher branches, and a year 1 formal assessment where she placed second when first had been within reach, and a corridor exchange where she said he earned it about Pren Kale and meant it without performance. He looked at the stack. He looked at the corridor, empty, rain sound, distant night tower footsteps fading. He lifted the architecture text. He put it back. He lifted it again. He read. 20 minutes was not long enough to understand everything. It was long enough to understand that the pages were not homework. They were a fault map. Standard inscription systems, defensive templates, authentication panels, approved rank 3 combat practice sequences, medical monitoring basics, rendered as failure space rather than effect promise. Gaps tagged. Clusters drawn. Cross-references to missing exception handlers and threshold defenses that ignored below-threshold force and humidity variance, bridges too tight for capital weather. The notation was Cipher shorthand disguised as geometric fidgeting. The analysis was not disguised at all. It was brilliant. Caden read a paragraph twice that described how a rank 3 defensive inscription in the combat practice curriculum could fail at parameters the Academy called safe because the simulation scripts assumed equivalence between mana signature and physical force inputs. He had trained on that curriculum. He had watched second-year students trust it because trust was what institutions sold when they did not want students testing below threshold. Nova had cataloged the failure mode with the calm precision of someone building a repository, not someone hunting gossip. Cluster tags linked the same missing grammar across unrelated texts, the fingerprint of curation, not accident. A margin note in her hand, he recognized the hand from midterm tablets and corridor margins said, intentionality has a shape. Random error is noisy. Curation is patterned. Another note linked authentication grammar in a foundation panel to a cluster of curriculum absences. He did not know what foundation panel she meant. He knew what the link implied. Someone had built a cage and called it standards. Nova was mapping weld points. He thought about Lisa's tribunal. He thought about fabricated evidence clean enough to fool the room. He thought about manufactured proof attributed to Nova Vane in a story that had been comfortable because villains were simple. The pages in his hands were not simple. They were not cruel. They were not performance. They were the work of a mind that read systems the way his mother read forged stress, for where force would go when the structure pretended it would not. He read for 20 minutes. He did not copy. He did not pocket. He did not photograph. The Academy discouraged ink capture on other students' work, and he discouraged himself from becoming the kind of operative who justified means with ends before he knew what the ends were. He memorized structure instead, cluster count, the combat practice fault reference, the authentication link, the phrase intentionality has a shape. He replaced the architecture text exactly as he had found it, offset half an inch, corner aligned with the Corel's ink stain, the stack beneath unmoved except for the order his reading had imposed, which he restored sheet by sheet from memory. He sat in the chair. He did not open his forge tables. Rain wept down the window. The tower pulsed once. He went very still. Stillness was not calm for Caden. Stillness was what happened when anger and curiosity arrived at the same door and neither would leave. The log in his head tried to file the pages. Category: unauthorized research possible. Category: advanced fault analysis confirmed. Category: threat to Academy stability unknown. Category: threat to Nova Vane probable if head saw this. Category: threat to students trusting practice curriculum immediate if she was right about combat failures. He had no category for the villainess who destroyed my sister is building the most honest map of institutional lies I have ever read. He had no category for, I want to show this to Toryn and also never let anyone else see it. He had no category for, she left it where a person sitting adjacent would find it, and I cannot tell if that was accident or test. 20 minutes ago he would have said accident. Now he was not sure. He thought about proximity, deliberate, not softening, closer observation range. He thought about her saying he earned it in the corridor with her back half turned. He thought about help instances logged and Cipher on midterm tablets and second place chosen. He thought about the pages saying test below threshold, always in the margin beside Pren's failure mode. He closed his eyes. He opened them. He left the library without touching the stack again. The forge wing corridor was empty. His room was third door on the left, narrow bed, desk, weapons rack, the more library reference text on the shelf with his mother's margin annotations from before Lisa stopped speaking about inscription theory at dinner. He sat on the bed. He did not unpack. He did not write the log entry immediately. He sat very still and let the 20 minutes rearrange the file. Brilliant was not the word he wanted. Brilliant sounded like admiration. Admiration was not in the column design. Truth was. The analysis was true in the way forged stress tables were true, not because you liked what they predicted, but because metal did not care about your feelings when load exceeded tolerance. Nova Vane had written a load table for the approved inscription framework. She had written it in Cipher. She had left it partially covered on a corral in a library where she knew he sat adjacent often enough to blur purpose and pattern. He did not know what that meant. He knew he could not unread it. He knew combat practice for second-year cohorts began in 3 weeks, mandatory witness sparring with rank 3 defensive sequences the fault map said could fail at parameters called safe. He knew Master Scholar had watched scholarship students and Cipher users and anyone whose work developed in unexpected directions. He knew Toryn counseled caution in phrases that sounded like insufficient records and meant someone is removing things from archives. He knew Pren Kale brought true things to Toryn's office because Nova had aimed him there without aiming him at her shadow. He knew Cira Loon was rewriting herself in a drawer with an unmailed letter. He knew Aldous sent smaller invitations because large ones had stopped working on a heroine script that was thinning. He knew none of that resolved Lisa. He knew all of it complicated Nova. He took out the log. He wrote, East Library, Night Rain. Vane Corel, fault map of standard inscription systems, cipher notation, cluster analysis, curriculum fingerprint hypothesis. Read approximately 20 minutes. Replaced exactly. Not copied. Assessment. Work is advanced beyond stated rank. Work is structurally sound. Work implies institutional curation of failure modes. If correct, combat practice curriculum is unsafe at documented parameters. Flags. Combat practice. Verify fault reference before sparring block. Head exposure risk if map discovered. Vane operational posture unknown. Accident versus test unknown. He stared at accident versus test. He did not underline. He closed the notebook. He sat very still another hour. His mother would have said, do not let anger file what curiosity discovered. Lisa would have said nothing. Lisa had said almost nothing for 2 years except exercise 7, and the reasoning was right. He thought about exercise 7. He thought about Nova sliding a note under his door. He had not yet connected to the woman who mapped cages in Cipher shorthand. He thought about putting the pages back exactly. That had been the right thing. That had also been a choice. He did not know whose test had passed. Morning came gray and ordinary. He trained at dawn because the cell was honest. He ate because bodies required fuel. He saw Nova in the corridor outside practical lecture, rank 3 posture, public face, scholarship annex nod to Pren. No acknowledgement of Caden beyond the brief professional distance night scholars maintained with inscription cohorts unless they intended to create scene. She did not know he had read it. Or she knew and was waiting. Both were possible. Both were unbearable in different directions. He took the path through the practice hall she most often used. Proximity without hostility. Observation upgraded. He would verify the combat practice fault reference before sparring block. He would not tell her he had read the map. He would not tell Head. He would watch. The file had no category for brilliant. He added one in pencil, lightly, where it could be erased if wrong. Capability, systemic analysis, institutional scale. Treat as operational until disproven. He erased nothing. He went to class. The hum in the practice hall corner foundation was faint at dawn, authentication grammar pretending to be heritage, Nova's cluster notes said in memory. He passed it without touching. He filed the hum. He filed her. He filed himself sitting very still in a room that smelled like forge oil and rain. 20 minutes had changed the shape of the log. He was not sure he wanted that. He wanted truth anyway. That was still the trap. He walked into it because the alternative was looking away. He was not the looking away kind. Even when stillness was the only honest move he had. Master Scholar Head had the kind of attention that did not announce itself until you realized your margins had been read without your permission. Nova felt it first in practical notation review, Head standing at the gallery rail while second-year cohorts demonstrated conditional branches, his stillness different from Toryn's stillness. Toryn's stillness meant thinking. Head's stillness meant filing. She performed rank 3, clean emergent branch, approved skeleton, Cipher hidden in plain sight at the edges. Toryn had taught her to compress until proctors saw diligence, instead of archaic grammar. Head watched her dismiss the stroke. He wrote on his clipboard. He did not approach. That was worse than approach. Approach meant conversation you could steer. Clipboard meant report. She filed Head watching and went to lunch where the scholarship annex could see her be ordinary. Toryn found her in his office hour line with Pren's latest failure mode documentation and a question about foundation authentication phrased as architectural curiosity. Toryn closed the door when she entered alone. Pren had stayed in the annex to test below threshold on a courtyard stone because procedure was contagious now. Toryn said, Head asked about your Tuesday library hours. Nova said, what did you say? Toryn said, that serious students use libraries. That Cipher affinity under historical equivalency review is still legal notation. That I supervise your channel. Nova said, is that true? Toryn looked at the ceiling. He said, sufficiently. She almost smiled. Almost. Toryn said, caution. One word. The same word he had used when he handed her the pre-archive record with her mother's name. Not fear, not stop. The precise pressure of someone who had spent 4 years investigating removed references without institutional protection. Nova said, how much caution? Toryn said, enough that you clear your corral when you leave. Enough that Pren logs failure modes, not guesses. Enough that you do not demonstrate anything that makes Head's report gain adjectives before we are ready. She said, ready for what? He did not answer directly. He said, for the name you are not saying yet. She looked at him. He knew. Not everything, not rank 4 private, not 19 notes, not the hypothesis unnamed, but enough. Overlap deepened. Trust deepened slower. That was still correct. She said, combat practice block starts in 3 weeks. Toryn said, I know. She said, the curriculum defensive sequence has a fault. Toryn's pen stopped. He said, show me. She showed him Pren's documented failure mode, below threshold force, simulation rejection, live test confirmation on lunch break stones. Toryn read it twice. He said, Head will not want this documented by scholarship students. She said, Head will not want a lot of things. Toryn said, do not fix it in public. She said, I wasn't planning to. He said, Caden Ashvale is planning something. She said, how do you know? Toryn said, because he asked me yesterday whether second-year combat practice parameters were simulation validated or proctor validated, and he does not ask casual questions. Nova went still. Caden knew. Not the map, maybe the fault reference, enough to ask about combat practice. Proximity without hostility. Observation upgraded past adjacent carrels into operational territory. She said, what did you tell him? Toryn said, the truth. Simulation validated. Proctors trust the simulation. The simulation assumes away what hurts people. Nova said, good. Toryn said, it is not good. It is data. She accepted the correction. Data was what she had. In the library that evening, Caden was at the adjacent corral. Not studying forge tables. Studying a historical text on combat inscription curriculum, open to the defensive sequence page. Annotations in his hand she did not read, because reading his margins would be the same violation she did not want him to repeat. She sat. She opened conductivity homework. She did not look at him. He did not look at her. The silence between them was not hostile. It was the silence of two people aware a third conversation existed beneath every public word. After 20 minutes, he closed the text. He stood. He said, quietly, without turning fully, you left something on the table 3 nights ago. She said, I know. He said, I put it back. She said, I know. Beat. He said, combat practice in 3 weeks. She said, I know. He walked away. No book offered. No confession. No alliance speech. Just data exchanged in 40 words. Pren found her at the scholarship annex door with a folio of overlap numbers and the expression of someone who had decided to trust procedure over instinct and was not yet sure which would cost more. He said, Toryn asked me to add combat practice failure modes to the log. She said, good. He said, Seelan says Ashvale asked him about below threshold testing in the cell. Nova said, Seelan talks too much. Pren said, Seelan talks exactly enough for information to move without looking like information moving. She looked at Pren. He was learning faster than patrons would like. She said, keep logging. Do not demonstrate fixes in the practice hall. If you see something fail before Head does, tell Toryn first. Pren said, and you? She said, I perform rank 3. He said, that's not an answer. She said, it's the only one you get in a corridor. He nodded. The nod was acceptance or surrender or both. Head appeared twice more that week, once at the Inscription Garden's edge during Nova's supervised study block, once at the library catalog desk where the anchor panel hummed faintly under catalog maintenance notation. Both times he wrote on his clipboard. Both times he did not speak. Syrah said at dinner, Head's watching you. Nova said, I know. Syrah said, Aldous asked me whether you were unstable. Nova said, what did you say? Syrah said, I said you were the most stable person in our room and the least honest about why, and he did not like that either. Mara said, should we be worried? Nova said, you should be studying. Seelan said, that's a yes wrapped in vain. Nova almost smiled. Almost. Caden took the practice hall path again. She took it too. They passed within 4 feet at the foundation corner, hum in her teeth, authentication grammar in stone, his forge posture registering load the way he registered everything. He did not stop. She did not stop. Proximity continued. Head's clipboard gained lines she could not read. Torryn's caution held like a ward line. Pren's network logged true things. The fault map mattered now beyond repository. Combat practice would test it in witness sparring with bodies instead of notation. Nova performed careful in public. Careful was not false. Careful was rank 3 in lecture and help at the scholarship table without demonstrating rank 4 and clearing her Corel and speaking to Caden in 40 words that were not alliance but were not nothing. At night she added to the notebook. Head scrutiny elevated. Toryn, clear Corel, no adjectives. Caden, red map, replaced exactly, combat practice aware. Pren, failure mode log expanded. 3 weeks. She did not write fear performed. She wrote procedures. Year 2 was settling into patterns that looked like ordinary academy life from the outside, and like a fuse shortening from the inside. She slept in short cycles, dreamed of below-threshold force and a defensive sequence that failed at parameters called safe, woke before the alarm, cleared her Corel at 11th hour, and filed anticipation without resolution. The crisis was not yet. It was coming, and that was enough to work with. On the walk back to the night tower, she passed the practice hall doors where second-year students clustered to read the posted sparring rotations. A boy from the eastern provinces, not Leora, younger, eager, said to his friend, the simulation says the defensive sequence holds at rank 3 parameters. We don't need to overthink it. His friend said, Ashvale overthinks everything. The first boy laughed. Nova did not stop. She wrote the laugh in memory beside Pren's failure mode log and Torryn's caution and Caden's 40 words. Overthinking was what you called testing below threshold when the institution preferred you trust scripture. She had overthought her way into 19 mapped nodes and a fault database and a private rank 4 compound and a summer at the embassy learning that heritage panels could hum authentication grammar. She would overthink her way into the practice hall when the sequence failed, and everyone who had not overthought would need someone who had. She did not want that moment. She prepared for it anyway. Preparation was not performance. Preparation was the truest habit she had. Syrah was awake when she entered the room, reading by lamplight, not the heroine texts Aldous recommended, a Toryn lecture transcript on defensive notation limits. Syrah said, you're late. Nova said, library. Syrah said, Caden's Corel was empty too. Nova said nothing. Syrah said, I'm not asking. Nova said, good. Syrah closed the transcript. She said, when it happens, whatever head is waiting for don't perform alone. Nova looked at her. Cira said, I don't have your map. I have eyes. Nova said, I know. The lamp burned low. The capital wind tested the window glass. Two girls who had been written as rival and heroine held a conversation that would not have fit in either script. Not rescue, not alliance, not vows. Procedure. Nova said, if I'm in a room where something fails, you document what witnesses say afterward. Names. Order. Exact phrasing. Cira said Toryn. Nova said Toryn first. Then whoever needs the truth. Cira said, and you. Nova said, I perform rank 3 until performance is not enough. Cira swallowed. She said, that's a terrible answer. Nova said, it's the only one I have. Cira nodded. She turned off the lamp. In the dark, Nova lay awake and counted 3 weeks shrinking towards sparring block and felt the hum in her teeth and did not resolve the anticipation into comfort or fear. Anticipation held. The work continued. Year 2 settled the way institutions settled, schedules repeating, rankings fading on the garden wall while new rankings formed in private ledgers. Autumn becoming winter in the capital stone without asking students whether they were ready for what cold made visible. Nova felt the settling as tension rather than rest. The academy's ordinary rhythms were cover. Cover was useful. Cover was also a countdown when you knew what ordinary hid. Combat practice block appeared on the posted schedule in letters large enough for parents to photograph. Second-year cohorts, witness sparring, rank 3 defensive sequences, proctor-validated parameters. Simulation scripts displayed on the practice hall wall like scripture. Pren photographed the scripture with his scholarship-issue tablet and brought the capture to Toryn's office with 3 lunch break live tests that said the scripture was wrong. Toryn forwarded copies to no one official. Toryn told Nova, this stays in the channel until someone gets hurt or someone asks the right question publicly. Nova said, someone will get hurt. Toryn said, then you will be in the room. She did not say she planned to be. Planning was operational. Saying was adjectives. Caden trained in the cell at dawn with the increased frequency of someone verifying fault references in muscle rather than margin. Nova saw him from the gallery twice, forms clean, stops abrupt at the defensive sequence transition where below-threshold force could slip past mana signature triggers if the practitioner trusted simulation over stone. He did not wave. She did not wave. Proximity continued without declaration. Cira's drawer still held the unmailed letter, 3 lines now, a 4th added in pencil. Head watches Nova. Aldous watches me. I am trying not to perform either script. Nova had not read the letter. Nova had seen the envelope edge when Cira opened the drawer for hairpins. Some data you did not take without permission. Some trust you built by not taking. Toryn overlap deepened into shared silence. Thursday channel expanded to include combat practice failure modes, anchor architectural questions phrased as curiosity, Pren's documentation standards, and the occasional glance that meant Head filed another line, and we are not ready to name why that matters. Toryn handed her a Sever School fragment from his private collection, not the full text, a notation excerpt showing pre-suppression self-referential grammar with safety preambles the approved curriculum had amputated. He said, same fingerprint as your cluster 3. She said, same hand. He said, same hand or same institution. Caution. She folded the excerpt into the folio that looked like dull homework. 19 nodes on the map. 12 embassy, 7 academy. Hypothesis still unnamed. Pattern connecting faster than she could document some nights. The database grew, fault clusters cross-referenced to anchor sites, authentication grammar tagged at practice hall and library catalog desk, combat practice curriculum linked to cluster 1 threshold defenses. Intentionality shape sharpened until it was harder to pretend the absences were accident. At the scholarship annex, Pren ran overlap math with Leora, while Mara kept patrons distracted with loud questions about conductivity that were only partly performance. Seelin moved information the way Seelin always had: too much talk, just enough signal. He told Nova quietly, Ashvile's been reading combat curriculum in the East Wing. Forge annotations. Looks like load tables. Nova said, thank you. Seelin said, are we doing something? Nova said, we're studying. Seelin grinned like he did not believe her and would help anyway. That was the trust network, not vows. Procedures repeated until they held weight. Head scrutiny did not decrease. It condensed. He appeared at the practice hall during supervised review, not sparring yet, form review, and watched Nova demonstrate the defensive sequence with rank 3 cleanliness, while her private ledger screamed that the sequence was unsafe at parameters called safe. He wrote on his clipboard. He said, "After dismissal, Lady Vane." A moment. The corridor was cold. Students flowed past. Caden was 3 doors down pretending to read a forge maintenance bulletin and actually listening with the whole body. Head said, "Your library hours are extensive." Nova said, "So are yours, scholar." His mouth did not smile. His eyes did. He said, "Scholar Toryn speaks highly of your diligence." She said, "Scholar Toryn is accurate." He said, "I will be observing your practical development this term." She said, "I will be developing." He walked away. Caden did not approach. Pren did, 30 seconds later, with the face of someone forcing himself not to look like he had been listening. He said, "That was." Nova said, "Expected." Pren said, "What do we do?" Nova said, "You log. You test below threshold. You do not become my public proof." He said, "And you?" She said, "I perform rank 3 until performance is not enough." He swallowed. He nodded. The nod was acceptance or surrender or both. Night work continued. The corral was cleared every time now. Fault map in the inner pocket. Architecture text decoy abandoned because decoys failed when readers were honest. She worked in the bathroom at second hour on anchor overlap percentages. She worked in the 7th floor room on Cipher tags linking embassy, receiving hall to inscription garden retaining wall. She wrote in the notebook, Year 2 Month 2. Combat practice in 9 days. Fault map operational. Caden parallel verification probable. Head filing. Hypothesis unnamed. Toryn, same hand or same institution. Pren network holding. Syrah, letter unmailed, script thinning. Anticipation rising. She did not write crisis performed. She wrote 9 days. Caden sat adjacent one evening when the library was nearly empty. He did not mention the map. He set down a book, more library reference, cipher notation history, and said, "This isn't yours." She said, "I know." He said, "Thought you might want the comparison." She looked at the cover. His annotations were precise, structural conclusions parallel to hers, different angle, forge-trained mind reading grammar as load. She said, "Why?" He said, "Because combat practice in 9 days uses a sequence that assumes away what hurts people, and I am not the looking away kind." He left. She opened the book. She read his annotations until the lamp flickered. She did not cry. Crying was performance and less private. She wrote in the notebook, Ashvale, parallel analysis, unsolicited, more reference. Not alliance. Not forgiveness. Data. Overlap deepened. Trust deepened slower. That was still correct. Combat practice posters went up on the practice hall doors, dates, times, proctor names, the academy's cheerful assurance that witness sparring built character and competence in equal measure. Nova walked past the posters on a morning when frost made the capital honest. Caden walked past from the opposite direction. They did not stop. They did not speak. The posters' dates sat between them like a third conversation. Pren texted via scholarship tablet Sealand's workaround for encrypted notes, failure mode log complete through sequence variant 4. Toryn replied through printer, caution. Channel holds. Syrah said at breakfast, "You look like someone counting days." Nova said, "I look like someone studying." Syrah said, "Same thing lately." Nova passed the salt. Salt was contact without performance. The inscription garden retaining wall hummed faintly under frost. The practice hall corner hummed louder. 19 nodes on the map. One fault map in her pocket. 9 days until bodies tested what notation had already proved. She performed careful in public rank 3 in lecture, help at the scholarship table, no rank 4 demonstrations, corral cleared, 40-word exchanges with Caden that were not vows. She performed careful and meant the help and hid the map and waited for the moment performance would not be enough. That moment was coming. She could feel it in the hum in her teeth and Head's clipboard and Toryn's one-word cautions and Caden's parallel annotations and Pren's true logs and the combat practice posters' cheerful dates. Anticipation without resolution, the fuse shortening, the work continuing. She ate breakfast, taught variance bands because teaching was cover and cover was kindness, and went to class without looking at the practice hall poster on the way back, though she looked anyway and filed what she saw. The crisis was not yet. It was close enough to taste, metal and ozone and below threshold force waiting in a sequence the Academy called safe. She would be in the room when it failed. She did not know yet what it would cost to be honest in front of everyone watching, but she knew the map was true, and that was the beginning of whatever came next. She carried it up the night tower stairs like a folio she had not yet opened. The capital wind moved against the glass. Students flowed around her, nobles, scholarship holders, the careful middle who survived by not being memorable. She was memorable anyway, second on the wall, first in the places that did not post, 9 days remaining. She slept in short cycles and dreamed of defensive sequences failing at parameters called safe and a counterstroke she should not be able to write at her stated rank. She woke before the alarm. The anticipation did not resolve. It held, and that was enough for now. The rest would come when the sparring floor opened and the Academy pretended its scripture was stone. She would know better. So would Caden. So would Toryn. So would Pren, watching from the gallery with a log that could not fix anything yet but would matter after.